Hello to everyone. Welcome back to my channel, Nourish by Claudia. And I am so excited because today I have Grace sharing the space with me. Grace, she's a trained holistic psychotherapist, a yoga therapist, a nervous system coach, and more than anything, she has been able to heal herself from many different conditions such as fibromyalgia, an eating disorder, depression, and we're going to discuss all the things that have been happening in Grace's life over the next few minutes or so. And she's also going to tell us how she's helping people nowadays facing chronic fatigue and chronic pain. For now, let's welcome Grace. How are you doing, lovely?
Hi. Oh, I'm doing well. I'm really excited to be here and to talk to your community. And you just came on my podcast, and I know the work that you do and the clients you serve. So I'm happy to speak and to be here.
Fantastic. And even though we are both wearing a t-shirt, I just realized that Grace lives in Colorado, so it must be pretty cold outside your beautiful home at this point.
It is. It is. Well, actually, today and yesterday, thankfully, the sun's been out and it's nice. The sun's out a lot here, so it's makes it worth it. But yeah, I'm just kind of done bundling up and I'm like, I want to be loose in my clothes right now.
Of course, I absolutely understand that feeling.
Yeah.
So Grace, let's start from the very beginning. What brought you to this place of helping people with nervous system regulation, chronic fatigue, and chronic pain? Can you tell us a little bit about your story?
Yeah, for sure. I'll actually go a step behind or before that, actually. Um, I say that, but I mean, once we get into this work and we can track back, I mean, you can probably track back to your childhood, really, and, recognize patterns and things. So I say that I came to this work in my 20s, which I did specifically, but, I can track back symptoms and things in my health back to like early childhood. But basically, I thankfully, very gratefully, was put in therapy as a teenager by my parents. I was dealing with some pretty severe anxiety and suicidal depression. And I was a part of a girls' therapy group and I saw a therapist, and it just, I mean, truly saved my life. Like, I don't think I would be here without it. And so she really touched my heart. And I pretty much knew like that's what I wanted to do. Like, I have to help other women the same way that I was helped. And I really wanted to do it for teen girls like I had been. And it ended up like my path just didn't fully take me there, but the intention was there to really work with women and teens specifically. So I went straight into college for psychology and then straight into grad school for counseling. And during grad school was the first time that my symptoms became like almost unlivable. It's when I was really diagnosed with fibromyalgia, like really deep chronic pain in different areas of my body. And I went down the whole traditional route. I went to doctors, I went to chiropractic, I went to naturopaths, I went to all types of physically based doctors. And at the same time, that was probably the height of my eating disorder that I didn't see at the time. I didn't recognize it. But it was definitely like a big time for that. And finally, a naturopath I saw he was seeing me for a while and things just weren't working. And he was like, you know what? There's this psychologist I know that I think you need to go see. And remember, I was in school, but they don't talk about this in school at all. I had no idea there was some kind of connection with my mental, emotional health and my physical pain. But this psychologist I went to see did. She was trained in this, one of the only ones in the area. Um, and within about 6 months, about 90% of my pain went away from just therapy with her. And it was also, I had recognized her. Well, she kind of pointed out, she was like, and I think you have an eating disorder that you need to address. So yeah, it's interesting because at that point, it wasn't the time for me to be like, oh, I want to do this. I want to share this work because I was pretty young. I mean, I was like 24 and I did the work, but I don't think my mind fully grasped like how large this could reach, right? Or what it could help with. So it was really just I had some neck pain, some hip pain. I'm hypermobile. I'm on the scale of hypermobility. And so that's where a lot of I thought my pain was coming from. And people would tell me, like, you have a little scoliosis in your spine, you're hypermobile in your joints, you're just gonna have pain, right? But that's not true. It's not the case. You don't have to. And so, part of the therapy at the time was to basically not think so much about your symptoms. If they pop up, work with the fear, decrease the fear, and just kind of move on. So that's what I did, which is why I didn't really do much else with it. And then fast forward about 5 years, and I started developing other types of symptoms like chronic fatigue, histamine reactions, mold toxicity. I went down the whole functional and physical rabbit hole again. I got tested for everything. I had things that showed up, like I had true things that showed up on tests, right? Like SIBO in the gut, Epstein-Barr virus, mold, like high mold toxicity. Um, and a lot of histamine reactions to food. And so I worked on those physically, and honestly, nothing changed. Like I was, the cleanest in all forms you could be, eating, my environment, like everything. And maybe here and there, like a few things would help, or like a supplement would help me, but that was about it. And then finally, one weekend, I was breaking down in front of the partner I had at the time, and he looked at me and he was like, back in the day. Um, and I looked at him because I was in the midst of like a full-on breakdown, like hysterically crying. And I looked at him and I was like, what are you talking about? This is real. What I'm experiencing is so real. So even then, I didn't, catch it because you feel dismissed. And then I think it was even later that day or the next day, I was like, oh shit. Okay. Like, yeah, I think he might be right. Um, so that's when I came to this work again. And honestly, I started applying some of the skills I knew to do. And within a couple weeks, like all of my food reactions went away. I started to decrease chronic fatigue. And then it was just a trajectory from there. And at that point in time, I was like, okay, this is what I have to do. Like this is my mission in the world to help people. Um, so that was a long intro story, but that's my story.
And thank you so
Yeah.
much for sharing. And I have so many follow-up questions.
Yeah.
The first one is actually what happened in those 5 years because you managed to recover yourself from many different type of symptoms, and then 5 years later, something else popped up again. What do you think that happened during that time?
That's a great question, and there's a lot I could answer with that. So I'll answer it in two parts. One, the actual things that happened, but then two, I think the reason that I got to that point was again, I didn't really continue following the work in terms of, expressing more repressed emotion and looking at my lifestyle, looking at my life, of how I was handling and being authentic in my own self. And so um lots of things happened. One, I met my ex-husband, and so I went into that relationship, which it's not some horrible thing. We just weren't a fit for each other. But that whole time, I really do think that I was kind of minimizing like my authenticity. I also was a stressed out grad student and intern, overworked and underpaid for a long time.
Yeah.
And that happens, unfortunately, in the therapy world a lot. And so I felt like I had a lot of imposter syndrome. I was like, I don't feel like I'm good at what I'm doing. I can't handle this. I'm stressed out. Um, and I feel like I was just kind of living in a way of mm, a little disconnected, actually. Well, maybe a lot disconnected, you
Yeah.
know? And it's interesting because if you knew me or if you watched me, you probably wouldn't say that. Because done already a lot of mental health, a lot of healing up until that point. One, it's a journey. We're always on a journey, right? But also, Yeah, I don't think I really understood how to work with the mind-body connection other than just some basic brain training. I don't think I fully grasped the deeper aspects of working with repressed emotion and the fact that like I didn't need to go down that physical route. I just didn't understand that.
I love your answer because it is multifaceted. Sometimes we think there must be the one thing that happened when we were a child or when we were teenagers, and then if we get on top of it, then we're going to be able to be fine for the rest of our life. But for you, it was the authenticity piece. It was being in a
Mhm.
relationship that wasn't possibly that safe for you. It was not doing the work as you previously did in the past, and also working too hard and not being paid enough, which is quite stressful on its own. And I'm really wondering, Grace, what does that feel to be chronically fatigued? Because I think that it's really important for us to make that distinction. Because lots of people say, "Oh yes, I'm chronically fatigued," but the reality is that if they allow themselves to sleep for a couple of nights, then they're gonna be able to
Mm.
bounce back and they feel better. So, what did that mean for you specifically?
Thank you for that question too, because you're right. It's not really understood. And if you haven't been through it, it's hard to grasp. I remember, I mean, I would explain it to my ex-husband and he was trying to be empathetic, but like he could never really get it, right? Because I looked fine. It's called an invisible illness kind of for a reason, unless you're at the point of bedridden. There are some people
Mm.
that can't get out of bed. And I had days of that. So for me specifically, again, everyone's different, but I would say a lot of people say it's this like bone deep tired. Your whole body feels like it is weighed down by 100 pounds. And it's usually has multiple symptoms with it too. It's not just the fatigue, but there's usually either pain with it or migraines or gut issues or all different types of things. But the fatigue specifically is that I mean, there's brain fog that happens. Like you can't focus, you can't think. It's like the world is fuzzy. When you are in bed, I mean, there'd be mornings that I couldn't get out of bed because it physically feels like I couldn't. Like I could go to the bathroom, but it's almost like someone bolted me to my bed. Like you just cannot get up. So it's a very deep physical shutdown response. Think of your body just officially shutting down. Um, and that would happen, and actually, I don't know, for a few days and then I feel like I'd be okay and then I would crash again. I had a lot of like ups and downs. That was my trajectory. I'd be okay and that's why everyone thought I was fine. If again at that time if you were even a friend of mine, I didn't talk about it much. Not many people really knew because and this is common because how do you explain that? Like people don't know how to respond to it if you're not through it, you know? There's a few people that knew I was going through something, but I just didn't explain it. So I operated when I was out of the house with people, probably okay. But then I would crash really hard after.
That really resonates with me. I remember telling a few of my closest friends what I was feeling back at that time, and the answer normally was sympathy, or it sounded like, "Oh, I do understand what you're going through." And I thought, no, no, you don't. You have no idea what it feels like to wake up in the morning and have paracetamol and double caffeine for breakfast simply because you cannot get out of bed and having to push through each and every single thing that you have to do, even though for the rest of the world is completely simple. So that was, yeah, something that I really recognize. And thank you so much for sharing this. One question for you. Did you get diagnosed with chronic fatigue? Did you get to that point where you saw a doctor and you received a professional diagnosis, or you've never managed to get that?
I actually did. I saw someone in Austin, which is when I started some IV therapy.
Mm,
And I think that's when the CFS and really mold kept coming up for me. So mold has been a
mm.
big part of my journey. And that's why they were like, we need to get these levels down. It's not great. It's not okay. So, I do have, there's a couple components to mold. Like there is a really strong physical reality to it, but then there's also a nervous system response to it. So, Yeah, those were my two things when I kind of came to. And then the histamine reactions came a little bit later, and that's what really took me out of life. I mean, I was down to eating like five foods for like a year because I would react to everything I had.
Right. Did that trigger your eating disorder again?
Yeah.
Of course.
In different ways, I will say it's
Mm.
not like I went straight back into it. It was interesting because I mean, I truly believe I had those reactions because I previously had an eating disorder. So I was I had like it's almost like I was predisposed to having sensitivities to
Yeah.
food, right? We see that a lot in eating disorders. So even at the time when it was happening, I knew there was a connection. I was like, I had a feeling. I was like, this is not right. This doesn't make sense. But I
Mm.
couldn't really understand it or grasp it. But I knew I was like, well, this is not good for my past eating disorder. So yeah, there was definitely tricky components there for sure.
Very challenging journey for sure. And I'm wondering, when did you decide to become a nervous system coach? How did that happen for you?
It was after let's see, specifically, yeah, it was after I really started to heal after that, like basically come to reality point of using this work with histamine and chronic fatigue. Once I started healing that, I don't think it was long before I went into a few different trainings. I went and trained in pain reprocessing therapy.
Mm.
I did a couple different nervous system trainings. So it was pretty quick. I was like, I need to do more training in this. And um, it all happened probably within less than a year of me starting healing and then starting trainings.
And did you do the pain reprocessing therapy with Alan Gordon and Dr. Horowitz or someone else's?
Yeah, and with Alan Gordon.
Did
Yeah.
you?
And then I did emotional awareness and expressive therapy with Dr. Schubiner and I'm blanking on the second name, but I did
Yeah,
both
me
of
too.
those.
That's why I didn't say I'm blanking as well. Well, anyway, I'm gonna put it in the comments down below for anyone that
Yeah.
is interested. Uh, Tell me, okay, I lost my questions, but who do you help nowadays? Which kind of
Mm.
clients you normally have in your clinical practice, and who do you think that you can serve?
You know, it's a combination, but I will say, and I feel like a lot of us are here for a reason, right? We've gone through our own and we start to really help the people that were similar to us. So I see a lot of women who have a history of chronic pain, have a history of any kind of disordered eating or eating disorder. Even if they're not fully aware of it, they come to me and we look in the past and realize it. Also, I have to say about that too, that I mean, if you've been down this route of holistically healing and trying to understand symptoms and been to different types of doctors and been told what to eat, there's usually some sort of disordered eating component there.
Yeah,
Like, how could there
absolutely.
not be?
Yeah.
How could there not? And so it's usually something we address. Um, yeah, women that really want to understand like how to feel more in tune with their bodies and how to feel more safe in their bodies so that their symptoms don't have to drive their life. A lot of high functioning, a lot of type A, a lot of perfectionists,
Mm.
people that have like high, strong goals in life and have wonderful intentions of how to live, whether that's in a career, whether that's with their family. And they love to be present, but their body's taking them out of the present.
People like us, basically.
Yeah.
And Grace, I think that we have to debunk a few myths. Do you still have symptoms sometimes?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, for being honest, because I think that that's what people get it wrong. That once that they go through this reprocessing therapy, then they're going to be fine for the rest of their lives. But we are still humans living in a human
Mhm.
body, and we are going through a time in our life that it's not really appropriate for our lizard brain and for our primitive bodies anyway. So, would you mind shedding a little bit of light when it comes to your symptoms and how they present themselves and how you recognize them and how you also let them go?
Yes, definitely. First, I will say this that what we're talking about, nervous system, mind body symptoms, it's a human response. It's
Yeah.
not just specific people, although there are a list of criteria of, what is what we term neuroplastic, which is chronic mind body symptoms, and what might be more physically based. But every human has a mind and body. Every human's physical body responds to difficult stress in life, responds to repressed emotion. So I just have to put that out there because it is all true. I get questions a lot of like, is this mind body? Is this mind body? And my answer all the time is yes. Yes, everything is,
Oh,
right?
yep.
Now, of course, we can dig deeper to understand like, you know, how to treat. Um, but I just have to say that first. But yeah, a lot of times, let's see, for me, there's two things that pop up on a like it's just like my automatic. Um, my neck and shoulder, like on a physical chronic pain area, that is just something I'm actually learning a lot about this year of releasing. And I've done a lot of work in it to understand kind of the more of the emotions behind it, how much I'm holding and controlling there, that it's the right side of the body. Interesting thing is most of my pain has always been on the right side of my body
Mm,
from head to toe. Even my injuries, like even a broken wrist, or even like I had a bruised rib one time, or even some clicking in my hip, like all on the right side. So, there could be a whole other episode of certain emotions in the body, but
let's
there's
send
that
so
interesting
much
pattern.
love for the right side of your body right now.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm,
And then sometimes I will have some brain fog and a little bit
yeah.
of fatigue pop up.
Mm,
That's for me personally, I have a strong shutdown response. When we're talking about the nervous system, some people have more of like a freeze or fight or flight, like high anxiety. I have a very quick shutdown. So that might be anywhere from just kind of dissociating for a minute and procrastinating on something that I feel a little fearful around to having some high fatigue for like half a day or something or a day that I have to work through. Um, the difference is now I see it. I've learned how to work with it, and sometimes I get support for it. Like I have a practitioner I work with.
yeah.
But yeah, I think that's for me at least, those are specific ones. And that's what I've noticed with people. There's usually like a couple things that your body just will automatically, it's your automatic coping mechanism that your body uses. And we all have something.
I find that for me is losing my voice. When I start to lose my voice, then I
Uh,
know that something is going on and needs to be addressed as soon as possible. And whenever I don't address it, then I know that I'm gonna be in bed with a cold or a flu or fatigue within 4 days. So my body is really smart, my brain is really smart. Then it's up to
mhm.
me to be smart and responding quickly or no. But it's interesting that at the end of the day, the core foundation is having that level of awareness and not responding with fearful thoughts and not, yeah. And whenever you actually tell us about it, because you are the expert, what happens when our body has a new injury or a new symptoms or an old symptoms, and we respond with a fearful response. So, for example, oh my goodness, I'm going to have this for the rest of the months. I'm not going to be able
Mm.
to go to Europe at the end of the year, or I need to go and see a doctor as soon as possible because it's too painful. What does happen? What does that trigger inside of us?
The fear that happens, like everything that you just said, is coming from fear, right?
Yeah.
What if, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? It's going to take me out for the day, blah, blah, all the like anxious thoughts that happen. The underlying is fear.
Mm.
And the stress response operates off of fear. So when there's high fear around symptoms, when we relate to our symptoms in a difficult way, so when we respond in that way, it increases them because we respond with fear. Our nervous system contracts and it gets really tight, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's really scary. Okay, let's send more symptoms to protect you, to shut you down, right? Because obviously something's wrong. And so it's just this feedback loop that happens. So when we can learn to respond with less fear, to learn how to soothe the fear, and instead respond with like curiosity and a little more compassion and love for ourselves, the trajectory is so different. It just decreases so much more. Actually, I can give a good example. It's funny, it just happened last night. Um, I've been doing this new workout that I really like. And in the middle of the night last night, I woke up and I had this, it's happened sometimes in my, like right behind my shoulder blade, my muscle will contract and really tense up to the point where like it hurts to turn over. And I haven't had this in a while. And I woke up with it and I fear automatically came up, right? Like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be taken out for the day. And so I was like, okay, no, no, no. We're going to listen to a couple meditations. And I probably laid there for a good 30 minutes to an hour listening to meditations and just reminding my brain over and over and over again and my body that it's okay. You're safe. I don't need you to send me symptoms right now. I promise. I promise I'm safe. And really just feeling that. And I went back to sleep. I woke up and it's gone. And I mean, it was truly like I turned over to go to the bathroom and I was like, oh crap. Like it was really painful. And yeah, I'm fine today. And that's specifically with my physical symptoms. It can shift pretty quickly with the fatigue. Sometimes it's a little different. Um, I forgot your original question, but I
Doesn't
think
matter, but this conversation is
okay.
almost bringing tears to my eyes because I feel very, very heard. And the fact
Mm,
that you decided not to answer with fear, but you decided to simply send safety messages to your brain, and then you managed to completely change the outlook of your day because the pain is almost completely gone, is just a testament of how powerful our brain is. But now, Grace, I need to ask you, how do you understand if we're talking about that neuroplastic pain or actually a real injury?
mm,
Because for some people that are just starting now to suffering from chronic pain, in the beginning, it can present as an injury. So, for example, like an injury, you get all the MRI, all the tests done. Maybe they find something on the X-ray. Maybe there is a bursitis. Maybe there is some kind of level of inflammation. How would you know if it's one or the other? Or for you, it wouldn't matter and you would still treat the injury from a mind body standpoint while seeking the support of a physiotherapist, for example?
yeah, I mean, 100% it wouldn't matter. I would
Mm,
completely treat it, my body. The times to receive physical help are obviously if there's like a broken bone happen, a fractured, something in your body like that, an immediate acute injury. Obviously, right? Any kind of tear, ligament tear, something like that. If you start off also receiving mind body treatment or treat yourself mind body as well as the physical, you'll it'll be so much better in the long run. If you have something physically like a fracture happen and you treat it from a physical standpoint and within whatever 4 months or something you're supposed to be, it looks fine and you're healed, but you're still having pain, it's that fear happening in your body, and that's the mind body. um when it comes to things like you mentioned bursitis, there's actually plenty of people, like you can take x-rays from all different kinds of people, and some people have pain and some people don't when it comes to bursitis. And you could go down a whole list of things like that, even scoliosis, depending on how severe it is, I will say
gotcha.
that. um, I have had bursitis in my shoulder and went down the whole route, and didn't understand like what to treat, how to not. I went down the whole physical route and sometimes it would work. And I will say, like, when I help support my body from a physical level, it very much so helps. So I'm not against like physically treating. It's just, how do I put it? We can't expect that to be the only way because that's not the root cause. I
Yeah.
see things like PT and strength training and things like that to be a wonderful support for our bodies. Definitely. It's just not the root cause. It's not the root treatment.
What would you say to a woman that comes to you and she's seeking help because she gets constantly injured? So every, let's say, 3 to 6
Mm,
months, there is always something new popping up in her body. Because I don't know about you, but even with the women that I work with, I find that pattern of dealing with constant injuries. And obviously, I work with women with hypothalamic amenorrhea that tends to overtrain. So there is definitely a physical aspect, but sometimes there is a disconnection between the type of injuries that they get and the type of exercise that they're doing. So
mm.
what would you say to that woman that she keeps always experiencing symptoms in different parts of the body?
First of all, that was me, 100%. I mean, like I could tell, I mean, I was 26 years old and being like, why am I always hurt? Like,
Mm.
always, you know? I mean, and everyone just told me it's because I was hypermobile. It's just that you're just gonna get
Yeah,
hurt more if the more active you are. I've always been an active person. Um, so what I would say to you if you're listening and that sounds like you, keep working on the root cause of your overexercising and look at your relationship with exercise. Doesn't mean you need to stop, but your relationship with it matters so much. And I'll be real with you, it's a constant like looking at my relationship with exercise because it ebbs and flows. Our bodies ebb and flow, our interests ebb and flow, you
yeah.
know? So what you used to enjoy doing and you still are forcing yourself to do because you think you should like it, maybe it's not working for you anymore. Maybe it's not working for your body anymore. So it's really important to look at our relationship with exercise because when you keep hurting yourself, you're doing things you don't actually, and I mean truly authentically, don't want to be doing, and you're forcing yourself to do it for alternative reasons. You may not consciously be aware of it. This is, I mean, I've been approached in this standpoint for many times, and I had to be like, I don't know, I do really like what I'm doing, and then I had to really look at it and really question it, and was like, oh yeah, I don't really anymore, you know. Um, so you don't have to keep being hurt. Um, it's time to learn a little bit more about your body and how to tune into it.
Absolutely. And exercising for women nowadays is a way to suppress some anxiety and also to control their life when it feels
Mm.
completely out of control. And I always question women that tell me that they do enjoy exercising 6 days out of 7 or waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning to exercise because I think that as human, after a while, we get bored of our routine. And if I hear someone that for the past 3 years have woken up at 3 a.m. every single morning to exercise, well, to me is a little bit of a question mark because there are so many beautiful things that we can do with our bodies and with our time. But Grace, tell us, what do you do? Like, as a nervous
Mhm.
system coach, what do you actually, how do you work with women? I'm really interested in learning more about that.
Mm. Okay, so the work that I do specifically, I usually say it's like a combination between therapy and coaching. So there's definitely a time to go in and process. Like sometimes our sessions might look like a traditional, somewhat traditional, like psychotherapy session. And I'm very somatically based. So I'm going to keep checking in with your nervous system whenever you're talking or sharing something or going into something, and really tuning in, which helps you tune in to, oh, okay, when I'm talking about this, when I'm describing it, it feels like something's going on, right? I can read you pretty well and tell like something's activating you. Um, and then sometimes I might be teaching you some skills like breathing or meditation or brain training or something like that, and educating you about what is going on. Because I really believe like the more we can understand ourselves, become educated in this work, it's just increases that awareness, of what's going on.
And why is it
Yeah.
important to check in with a person?
Oh, like in session? Okay,
Yes, yes,
because
sorry.
yeah, yeah. So for instance, right now, if I kind of checked in with myself, sometimes when I get a little more sympathetic in my nervous system, I get a little nervous or I get like passionate about what I'm talking about and I can start talking fast. I like talk really fast and then I start to lose a little bit of breath. But if I were to check into myself within myself and I just give myself a breath and like settle into my body, the words that I start to say and express come out differently, right? They come out from a place of, they feel more connected and clear instead of this kind of like hype, fast pitch, like talking in a way, blah, blah, blah. And that's just a small example. But if we're not aware of if we're not in tune with how something feels, we're going to keep dismissing ourselves and making decisions that are not right for us. So, actually, I'm in a container with embodied practitioner right now, and he's like my mentor right now, and he keeps, man, I thought I knew my body well, my nervous system signals well, and he's teaching me so much more. There's so many layers to this, but to really not only be in tune with yourself, but when you're in connection with someone else, our attachment and relationship
Mm.
is co-regulating in and of itself if you can feel safe and trusting. And sometimes that takes time. I just told him the other day, and we've been working together for months. I was like, okay, I feel like my nervous system's finally really trusting you more. But we go around and not really recognizing like how distant we are from people, like how shut off we are or how nervous we are. And being in relationship with a coach or a therapist can be really healing if they know how to hold that space, right? And there's that trust and attachment there. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I could go so much more into attachment because it's the like so much of the root of our nervous system is secure attachment or really insecure attachment and dysregulated nervous system. Um, yeah.
Thank you for saying that. I read an article last night, no, it was a couple of nights ago, that was talking exactly about that in relation to the partner that you have chosen for life. So that can be your spouse,
Mhm.
fiance, whatever that person is. And I was looking at my husband and thinking, are you safe to my nervous system? Because I was asking myself questions that I've never asked myself before. And I wish that we all knew those type of questions, the questions to ask ourselves when we start the relationship instead of 15 years in the relationship, right? But it is so true because sometimes in this work, we focus so much on our own story, our own nervous system, but we live in a community, we live in a society, and it's fundamental to know how to regulate when in presence of others. And I love the fact that you have given us a live experience of what it feels like working with you. And that you managed to regulate yourself within a split second. And you managed to do something that people cannot do in an entire day. If you look at people experiencing with anxiety that they cannot breathe, they wake up in the morning
Mhm.
feeling that way, and they go to sleep once again feeling that way, and not being able to have a proper night's sleep as well. Which is just a reminder of how important this work is. And Grace, do you also use yoga in your sessions or in the way that you work with clients?
Mhm. I do. I come from a really strong yoga background, and so it informs a lot of my work. It might just not look like it in a traditional sense. I have in the past hold, and I still will, if people want it, hold yoga therapy sessions where it is more physically based. But usually, the yoga I bring in now is more from a breath perspective, meditation, more of looking at our thoughts in a certain way. Because if you're not aware the physical practice of yoga, which we all know at studios and things like that, is just one limb of yoga.
Yeah.
Yoga is a really rich um, modality to understand ourselves and the world and kind of a way of being. And so I bring more of that side of things in instead of the physical in terms of holding poses. Um, but actually, in some of my programs that I have online, they have actual like physical. I lead you through some physical practices in there. So yeah.
Beautiful. And couple of fire questions.
Mhm.
If you could recommend a book to someone that is just starting this journey, do you have something in mind that you would say, yeah, just download that first?
Yes. When it comes to chronic pain,
Mm.
The Way Out by Alan Gordon.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Classic, great one.
Yeah.
But then actually a newer one came out that is much more around not just physical chronic pain, but really helps you understand the nervous system and was written by two authors who went through their own CFS journey and now teach it. It's called Heal Your Body. I think that's right. By Cardin Rabin and Jin Man. Um, and they
I
did a really
haven't seen
beautiful
that one.
job. They did a beautiful job with that book. I think it came out last year. So yeah.
Well, I just definitely have to download it after this podcast. And what are your three non-negotiables when it comes to your health to make sure that you manage your symptoms and you keep them at bay as much as you can from a physical and mental standpoint.
Mm. Mental, I will say mental and emotional first. Every single day for me, my check-in is through meditation. I'm a really strong meditator. I have been for years. That's my way to connect. That's my way to soothe. That's my way to unblock certain things that are stuck. I meditate every day. And usually that also goes along with a spiritual practice. So I pray, I connect with spirit. I haven't even talked about it, but that is a big part of my life and my work is spirituality. And so that's really my connection point. Really, really checking in with me every single morning. It's a non-negotiable. Physically, I get outside every single day.
Mm.
Um, and usually I'm walking my dog if I'm not going for a hike. Um, we know there's so much power in nature and sun, and I have to do that every morning. I would say definitely within the first couple hours of waking up from a physical level. And I usually have some sort of practice, but as I said before, I mean, exercise practice. As I said before, it ebbs and flows. So, just kind of like what I'm in the mood for month to month, but some sort of strength. Because I will say this, no, you don't have to have pain with hypermobility, but I've noticed for me, some sort of strength training for me is really supportive for my joints, for my body. So it's pretty important to me.
And living in Colorado, I'm pretty sure that you have wonderful hikes during
Hmm.
summertime and maybe some skiing during wintertime, even though I'm not too sure about that. But it's nice to have so many seasons. So apart from the strength training, whenever you go outside, you get to see sometimes maybe the snow, sometimes you get to see flowers, sometimes you get summer and lots of greenery. So it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Grace, thank you so much for sharing so many golden nuggets today. It has been a pleasure having you being part of this channel. I wish that we could have an episode number two because there are so many other questions that I would like to ask you. And I know that so many of the women that are listening to this channel or that are working with me are going to resonate with your story and with a few of the things that you shared. So, if someone would like to work with you, what's the best way to connect with you at this point?
Yeah, for sure. So two different ways. One, you can find me right on my website. There's a contact page, and there's just a few questions. You can submit a form, and I respond in the same day. You can also explore my programs on my website, or I'm pretty active on Instagram, so you can come and DM me anytime, and I'll respond.
And I've also noticed that you have done just a community workshop in Boulder, Colorado. So you're also offering face-to-face group programs at this point, which is quite rare nowadays.
Yeah, it's actually something I've been really feeling called to do. I've been virtual for a while, for years now. I mean, since COVID, and it's been wonderful. It's allowed me to travel. It's allowed me to make this move here. I mean, if I wasn't virtual, I would have had to start my practice all over here because it wasn't online before. So, grateful for that. But I've just really been feeling the pull to be more in person. So yeah, I'm co-hosting a Boulder Women's Group. If you're in the area, would love to have you the second Thursday of the month. And more to come. I'm not sure yet, but more to come this year in person. And I forgot to mention my podcast. I love my podcast right now. It's filling me up. I love sharing and having guests like you on. So yeah.
And when I saw the post about the Boulder community, the Boulder group, I felt so pulled to it. I felt so cold that I talked to my
Mm.
husband and I said, would you mind if I just take a flight to the United States and I'm gonna be away from the kids for a week? Would you mind that so terribly? But yeah, if you decide to do a travel one and you decide to come to
Mm.
Australia, I'm gonna be the first one to sign up. Uh,
Oh, awesome.
so, Grace, once again, it has been a pleasure, and we will see you hopefully again in this channel. Bye for now.
Amazing. Bye.